Greetings, War Thunderers. This is Longshot with you again, and welcome to another episode in my new Versus series. In this one, we'll be looking at the Spitfire Mk1a versus the Ishak I16 Type 18 and the Bf110 C4. So as you can see, we started against the Ishak. This time we are not firing in head-ons. We want to assess the capabilities of each of the planes in a dogfight without any damage from a head-on encounter influencing the outcome. So as you can see, I got guns on him first, but now we're in a bit of a turning battle, and I can no longer bring my guns to bear. Instead, he's getting shots on me. Now I'm trying to try and I pulled the plane up into a slight immelman there, which was enough to force him to overshoot just a little. And as we did with the MiGs, we're into a bit of a rolling scissors where I'm desperately trying to force him to overshoot. In fact, I've got the flaps deployed and I've cut my throttle. And at that point, it seemed to be working, but then he's responded in kind, and his low speed handling is better than mine. Even having the high point there, I was unable to get guns on him. Now it's his turn, and he will certainly turn down and get a really nice shot at me, and that's all there is to this particular dogfight. 1-0 to the I16. So from that it seemed obvious to me that the I16 was simply a better turner. But we'll try again and see what happens. Okay, time for round 2. Okay, this time he turned away from me rather than towards me, which makes the opening dynamic a little bit different. It seems to me that the I-16 is a superior plane in the vertical to the Spit-1a. The Spitfire, unless it's got a lot of speed up, it tends to bleed a lot of energy in vertical maneuvers. In fact, it bleeds a lot of energy horizontally as well. And that could actually be the difference between these planes. Of course, it doesn't help that I've got the landing flaps out in order to increase my turning speed. Not that it's done any good whatsoever. So my tactic of trying to slow down and out-turn the I-16 simply hasn't worked. So this is a bit different. I took the Spit-1a up to an altitude advantage of about 1.5 kilometers over the I-16. I'm going to try a diving attack. I'm using WEP to try and accelerate, but even so, it's accelerating pretty slowly. I mean, this plane is not built for any kind of boom and zooming. And in fact, even though he's just flying level, I'm taking quite some time to catch him up. Okay, now he brakes. I'm just going to go straight into a climb so I can reset. I can see I'm actually not leaving him behind at all. He's just climbing straight up after me. And I'm getting close to stall speed. I have to hammerhead over. He already has guns on me, and we just have to settle for a head-on, which I was lucky enough to win. But actually was a 50-50 encounter, and in fact my engine's dead anyway, so it was really a draw. So even with an altitude advantage, the Spit-1a does not have an edge over the I-16. So now it's my turn to fly the better plane, and aim is in the punching bag. Now AIM's going to use a different approach. Instead of slowing down to try and turn fight as I did, he's going to keep his plane in the vertical and try and maximise the speed as much as possible to try and counteract the I-16's energy retention, and we'll see if that works. Now in this case I held the altitude advantage, and as you can see we're both pushing our control surfaces to the max, and the I-16 is not in fact out-turning the Spitfire to any marked degree, so it's not a question of just straight turning time. I decided to get a bit more aggressive with my attack angle, and that's enough to spook aim into pulling into a scissors. Now I definitely have the advantage in this dogfight. So you can see how the Spitfire almost stalls as you try and take it vertically. It's really not happy there, and if I was a halfway decent pilot I would have had a really long burst into him at that point. As it is, I'm totally able to just sit inside his attempts to loop and hit him with deflection shots on the way past. Except here I was a bit lazy, I didn't follow him quite closely enough, which meant he was able to come out of his split S and have time and space in order to get a 50-50 head-on encounter against me. So congratulations to AIM at that point. He was basically the superior pilot in that dogfight, despite the fact that the plane he was flying was clearly being outperformed. So we're going to try again. Once more, he pushes the Spitfire into a loop, which slows the plane down and does nothing for its turning time. The I16 is simply outperforming that Spitfire in every aspect. Which is interesting, as the I16s were totally outflown in the Spanish Civil War by the Bf110s, to the point where the I16 pilots had to fly in a defensive circle when there were Bf109s around, because they were so far outclassed. Whereas the Spitfire Mk1as and Mark IIs were on pretty much even footing against 109s in the Battle of Britain. And yet here, that same I16 is totally wiping the floor with a Spitfire Mark I. There is just no contest really, as long as I don't make a mistake. Even further, the Spitfire is a Tier 2 plane at battle rating of 2.3, whereas this I16 is a Tier 1 plane at a battle rating of 1.7. Figure that out if you can. Let's move on to the second part of the video. Now it's AIM's turn to fly the Spitfire, and I'm in a Bf110 C4. Now this was interesting to us because the Bf110 in previous patches was an exceptionally good low-speed dogfighter, simply because whenever you put the rudders out, it was like putting on a handbrake. Yes, you lost a lot of speed, but this plane handled extremely well at low speed. It could pretty much just turn on the spot doing 80 kilometers an hour. It no longer can. They've adjusted its flight model, realistically I believe, so that it retains energy, but that means it can't just turn on the spot, and that Spitfire easily outflew me. So now it's my turn. We've just switched planes. That was a short battle because he got the pilot killed, but the outcome seemed inevitable. Now AIM again is going to make much more use of vertical manoeuvring than what I am, because we know by now that the Spitfire is weak vertically. You can see I'm pretty much at stall speed just trying to follow him there. And if he can actually build up some good speed in his plane, he may be able to gain separation from me and then an advantage. So he's putting his plane into a succession of dives and loops. Because it's obvious by now that in a pure turning battle, the 110 has no chance. But it's just not quite fast enough to gain separation from the Spit. Though he's trying again. And now we're into a straight race. We're putting each of our planes into low yo-yos as best we can, given our low altitude, to see if he's basically seeing if he can fly away from me. And he can't, not quite. And neither am I pulling him in. That was an extremely lucky shot at twice the convergence distance. But it seemed to be enough to spook aim a little bit, and for whatever reason I am now slowly starting to close the gap. He sees that, and our dogfight has resumed. Although now he has so little altitude to work with, it's going to be very hard to try and gain any kind of energy advantage. I can just keep hosing him with shots. As you can see, without any energy to start with, the 110 is incapable of climbing either. And now it's just a matter of time. Just going into a high yo-yo here to avoid overshooting. And that'll do it. So one last try with this combination of planes. This time AIM has an altitude advantage, as you would typically try for in the 110. It's an excellent climber and performs very well at high altitude, and he is basically going to boom and zoom me. Whenever I see him coming, I'm going to try and put my plane into a climb to lessen the time he has guns on me, and I'll barrel roll or snap roll the plane to try and make it hard to aim. And then I'm going to try and get shots at him as he zoom climbs away, which I was able to do. I've scored quite a few hits there, although of course they're not going to do anything against a plane as tanky as a Bf110. My plane stalls, have to hammerhead it over, and yes, he's into the next diving attack. I'm just going to pull it round hard, hopefully avoiding most of his guns, and then again hit him as he climbs back out. If anything, AIM was climbing a bit too soon there. If my plane had cannon, or if his plane was a bit less tanky, those shots I was getting on him could have counted. Which basically means in arcade, you need to extend further away before you go into a zoom climb. But now I have a red wing, and with the Spitfire that seriously unbalances it. I couldn't keep the nose up as I tried to face his attack, which meant he got a nice straightforward shot at me, and that was it. So the lesson from this is, if you're in a 110, get an energy advantage and keep it. Well, thanks for watching. There'll be more videos of this nature to come. Please feel free to leave comments and suggestions to help us make the videos as useful as possible.